When you think about the greatest battles humanity has faced, or the fiercest enemies we have ever encountered, what do you think? Who do you think ultimately won? In the movies, we often imagine ourselves coming together to fight a common threat, usually aliens invading us from outer space. But what if I told you that many of those battles have already happened right here on Earth, and that we all have faced a common enemy, a common invisible enemy, microorganisms. Just 5 years ago, the world was brought to its knees. The global pandemic caused by a virus named SARS-CoV-2 shook everything. Our health systems, our economies, our sense of safety. The risk of dying or becoming seriously ill was real. There weren't enough human or material resources to treat everyone, and so measures had to be taken. Measures that many didn't enjoy or agree with. And still, despite all that disruption, that virus wasn't even the deadliest we have faced. In the early days of COVID, our chance of dying was around 3%. What would have happened if our microscopic enemy had a 60% chance of killing us? Well, we don't have to imagine it. We just have to look back in time, back to Europe in the 14th century. You have probably heard of it, or seen those eerie images of plague doctors wearing long, big masks. Those were the times of the Black Death. A bacterium called Yersinia pestis spread through fleas riding on rats, killing around 25 million people in Europe, about a third of its population at the time. It turned entire cities into graveyards, and it took Europe generations to recover from the loss of people, of workers, of stability, from a continent that looked like a war zone. Anyone could be at risk of catching Yersinia pestis. Even Genghis Khan, one of the most feared leaders in history, may have lost his life to this invisible enemy. Recent theories suggest he died of plague. At the time, the disease was spreading across Eurasia, and historical accounts of its symptoms seem to match it. Another great conqueror might have suffered a similar fate, Alexander the Great. There are many theories about what caused his death, but 3 of them involve infectious diseases: typhoid fever, West Nile virus, and malaria. Malaria being one of the strongest candidates. Even Napoleon's downfall might have been tied to microbes. The defeat of his army in Russia in 1812 is often attributed to the cold. But before winter even arrived, rickettsia was already attacking his troops. It is estimated that over 80,000 soldiers died of typhus before they even reached Moscow. That loss was devastating, and it weakened his campaign beyond recovery. What do these 3 historical figures have in common? They are considered military geniuses, and yet none of them could defeat a microscopic enemy. In their defense, how can you fight an enemy you don't understand, one you don't even see? Well, the answer is science. In the 17th century, a man with extraordinary curiosity, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, introduced us to an entirely new world. A world no human had seen before. The microscopic world. By perfecting lenses and creating some of the first microscope, he became the first person to observe microorganisms. It was the beginning of a long journey to understand our tiny enemies. Since then, science has given us powerful tools to fight back. In 1796, Edward Jenner developed the first vaccine. And more than a century later, in 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered something just as revolutionary: antibiotics, a way to attack bacteria directly. These tools that science has given us have increased our sense of security. We may feel that the time of deadly infections is behind us, but microorganisms are fighting back, and they are taking every opportunity we give them. Refusing vaccination is tearing down our first line of defense, making us vulnerable to diseases we thought were long gone. And here's something to think about. In more than 200 years of vaccines, we have only managed to eradicate one human disease, smallpox. Meanwhile, the overuse of antibiotics is weakening one of our strongest weapons. It hasn't even been 100 years since antibiotics were discovered, and yet bacteria are already evolving. They are developing resistance, and that's deeply concerning. Because antibiotics don't just treat infections, they also prevent them, which is why they are essential for procedures like surgeries, cancer treatments, and organ transplants. The fight against microorganisms is far from over. That is why, as a society, we must invest in science so we can rearm, reorganize, and defend ourselves from the enemies we still cannot see.